Hello and welcome to or welcome back to my channel. My name is Marin and here you will find a little beauty, a little books, and a little teaching content. So if that sounds like something you might enjoy, I would love for you to subscribe and stick around and join me in my little corner of YouTube. Today's video is going to be my March reading recap and my first quarter reading recap for 2024. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now, usually I would do this in two separate videos, but my reading in March was so slim that it's kind of silly to do two separate, so I'm just putting it all together in one this go round. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with my March reading recap, giving you the names of the books that I read, ranking them from my least favorite to favorite, and sharing some stats. And then I'm going to flip into my overall quarterly reading recap for the first quarter of the year. So let's go ahead and start off with my ranking. So my least favorite book that I read in March was Fairy Tales Every Child Should Know by Hamilton Wright Mabie. This was a collection of fairy tales for children, as the name implies, and I only gave this one 2 stars. It really was very dryly written, not a lot of excitement. Some of the tales were interesting. I hadn't heard them before. It seemed like he'd taken a bunch of fairy tales and kind of mashed them together to like almost create his own fairy tales, but his way of storytelling was just very bland and uninteresting. So 2 stars for that one. At number 3 was Hold Still by Nina LaCour. This is a YA contemporary book about a girl named Caitlin, sorry, I had to think for a minute, whose best friend commits suicide, and this is kind of like the fallout of that. I was really expecting this to hit me a lot harder than it did, considering how I've responded to previous Nina LaCour books, but this one didn't work quite as well as I was hoping it would, so I only gave this one 4 stars. At number 2 is Queen of Thieves by B.Z. Marsh. This is the start of a historical fiction series about an all-female group of thieves during the gangland era in London. It's set in 1946, and we're following Nell as she kind of falls into this group of women thieves and what happens after that. This is the start of a series. I believe there's 3 books now, but I have no intention of continuing the series. I liked the first one a lot, 4 stars, but I feel like the ending of this one was satisfying enough that I do not need to continue. And my favorite book of the month was a nonfiction book. It was Dictatorland, The Men Who Stole Africa by Paul Kenyon. I really enjoyed this. It's an in-depth look at various leaders of African countries who actually turned out to be like tyrants, dictators, as the title implies, and kind of what they did to various countries in Africa after the European nations left. So very interesting, very in-depth, very hard to read in a lot of circumstances, but I found it very, very interesting. So 5 stars for that one. So now let's go ahead and talk about overall stats for the month of March. As you just saw, I only read 4 books, so not a whole lot to talk about, but this did work out to a total number of pages of 1,296, and a total amount of hours listened works out to 21.6 hours. So I did the bulk of my reading via audio. So let's talk about format. I read 3 audiobooks and 1 physical book. The longest book I read was Dictatorland, which came to 480 pages, and my shortest read of the month was Hold Still, which was 229 pages. For genres, I had 1 of each. So I had 1 nonfiction, 1 fantasy, 1 contemporary, and 1 historical. For authors, I read 1 returning author, which was Nina LaCour, and 3 new to me authors. In terms of how I acquired the books, I actually owned all 4 of these books in some capacity, but because I was doing a lot of audiobook listening, I did borrow 2 of the titles from Everand, and I had 1 that I had purchased from Audible. For the age breakdown, I read 2 adult books, 1 YA book, and 1 children's book. So in terms of series breakdown, I did read 1 starting series book in Queen of Thieves, but as I already mentioned, I am not continuing that, so that will be a series DNF. And for the star breakdown, very simple. I had 1 2-star, 2 4-stars, and 1 5-star. So that is the March recap. Okay, before I get into quarterly stats, I want to go ahead and share my new to me purchases. So I did pick up 2 Book of the Month books in March because if you are what they term their BFF tier, you get a free book from one of the Book of the Year nominees. So I decided to go with The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This one sounded the most interesting to me, and this was the free book that we got for being on that tier. And then my actual March Book of the Month pick was Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. This is a thriller, and I do not usually pick up thrillers in physical copies that I'm going to put on my shelf because, as a general rule, I don't ever reread thrillers because once you've read it the first time, the surprise element is gone. So I really only picked this up in order to get the free book, and also because I am trying to use up my credits because I will not be renewing Book of the Month after I use up this year's worth of credits. So figured I'd go ahead and pick it up. I did hear very good things about it from people who had ARCs and things like that, so I'm hoping I really enjoy this, but just know that this is not a type of genre that I would usually pick up as a physical read. So just throwing that out there. And the last book that I picked up is more of a professional development type book. It is called Makerspaces, Remaking Your Play in STEAM Early Learning Areas. It's by Robin Chappell Thompson and Michelle K. Compton, and it looks like this. So I'm going to be reading this over the summer to kind of get some more ideas about how to turn part of the school library into a maker space. That's been my goal from the get-go. It's just taking a lot of time to weed through all of the things that are in there and figure out what I want to do with the space. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one. There's like full color illustrations of ideas and things like that. So I think it's going to be really, really useful. And since I'm going to be laid up after having ankle surgery, that will be a great time to dive into this. So that is the other book that I picked up in March. Now let's go ahead and focus on the first 3 months of 2024. So I did read a total of 25 books in the first 3 months of the year for a total of 7,924 pages and a total amount of hours, give or take, of 124 hours of audio. In terms of the longest book that I read, it was The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken, which clocked in at 488 pages. And the shortest book I read was A Mirror Mended by Alex E. Harrow, which was 128 pages. For the formats, I read 16 audiobooks, 3 physical books, 3 mixed media books, so that was like a combo of either ebook and audio or physical and audio, and then 2 ebooks. For genres, I read 12 total different genres. The most read genre surprised me. It's fantasy. I read 5 of them. I also read 3 nonfiction, 3 romance, 3 historical fiction, and 3 contemporaries. I read 2 mystery books, and then I read 1 each of dystopian, magical realism, paranormal, poetry, thriller, and classic. So that's the genre breakdown. Pretty good. I like that I was able to not just sink into one specific genre, but was really kind of reading from a mix of them. It keeps things kind of fresh. For author information, I read 10 returning authors and 13 new to me authors. For series info, I did start 5 new series. I continued one series, which was the Nancy Drew series by Carolyn Keene. I completed one series with A Mirror Mended by Alex E. Harrow. That is her Fractured Fables series. And then I DNF'd one series with Queen of Thieves. For the age breakdown, I read 13 adult books, 5 young adult books, 0 middle grade books, 2 new adult books, and 3 children's books. In terms of how I acquired the books, I did read 16 owned books, which is really, really good. I'm really trying to focus on reading books that are on my actual physical shelves or my e-reader, so that makes me very happy that 16 of the 25 books I read in the first quarter of the year were owned. Very good start. And for star breakdowns, I did have 3 5 stars, 9 4 stars, 11 3 stars, 2 2 stars, and 0 1 stars, because I don't really give 1 stars. If it's going to be a 1 star, I usually DNF. This works out to an average rating of 3.7 for the first quarter of the year, which isn't terrible, also isn't fantastic. As you saw with those numbers, I have had very few 5 stars. I'm going to actually go ahead and list them here because there's only 3 of them. So I gave 5 stars to The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by Ilan Pappé, Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood, which I vlogged and I'll link up in the cards, and Dictatorland, The Men Who Stole Africa by Paul Kenyon. So that's it, 3 5 stars. Not a great start to the year, which is also why I think March was perhaps not a great reading month. So we'll see if I can do a little bit better in the second quarter of the year. Now, I did pick up 12 new books in the first quarter of the year, and I have only read 2 of them. So not doing great there. Hopefully I can get that ticked up a little bit higher, because one of my goals is to read newly purchased books this year. So not off to a great start with that. We'll have to see how it goes. All right, that's it, y'all. That is my March reading recap and my first quarter reading recap. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel if you would like to see more from me, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.